the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Yaron Brook Show. Thanks for joining me this evening. I really appreciate it. All right, we've got a very varied show today, so we're going to cover some topics kind of from all over the place. So should be fun. We're going to start. We're going to start with my thoughts on the movie, Netflix movie, The Irishman, which my guess is some of you might have seen, and others, well, you can decide whether you want to see it after you hear what I have to say. And we'll talk about the Jewish holiday of Chanukah, what it means, what it signifies, why it exists, why people, well, thanks. I'll need the headphones later, but not now. Why people celebrate it today, what's its relationship to Christmas, the history of it. I've noticed a lot of people have no clue what it's about. So, a little bit of education about history and about religion. And we'll talk about Christmas in a week, right, when it gets closer to Christmas time. And then I've got a video with Kyle Kulinski, talking about healthcare. We'll talk a little bit more about healthcare and talk about the way the left and the right, and I'll give some examples from the right as well, manipulate the data. This is a running theme with us, right? It's a running theme at how people use false economics, manipulate the data, lie about stuff, lie with certainty and with passion and with moral conviction. And the people on the left do it, and the people on the right do it, and they sway everybody. And nobody anymore is actually interested in facts and reason and analysis and logic. They're just interested in emotional manipulation, pseudo facts, distorted statistics, bizarre pretenses of economics, and that's what sways the world. And if you're like me, who trying to look for facts and reality and actual, logic, it's not popular. There's not a following for that. There's not a following. So, maybe the conclusion is I should start being not just more emotional, because I'm pretty emotional, but manipulative and dishonest. Anyway, The Irishman. Irishman is a movie on Netflix, produced by Netflix, had a run at the theaters as well. I think in the more artsy theaters, has won some awards, primarily in Europe, I think, is probably up for an Academy Award, or will be up for an Academy Award. It's a 4-hour-long movie. It's got a cast of, some of the real heavyweights in terms of actors of the last, 30, 40 years. Robert De Niro is the main guy. Al Pacino, John Pesci, Harvey Keitel, Ray Romano. Everybody on screen is recognizable. I mean, they're all some of the great actors, of the last 30, 40 years, and they all have played gangsters, right? They all have played gangsters. They've all been in gangster movies. This is a movie made by Martin Scorsese, who made quite a few movies with both Al Pacino in his youth, and Robert De Niro. The movie really, I think, that made Scorsese was Taxi Driver in the 1970s, and then there was the gangster movie, the Cuban Gangster, and it made quite a few gangster movies. Robert De Niro, of course, from The Godfather on. Joe Pesci has starred in a number of different gangster movies, and The Irishman is a gangster movie. it's a movie about the mafia. It's a movie about the mafia, and in particular, specifically about the assassination of the union boss Hoffa. So it's, for those of us who grew up in or remember the 70s and 80s and the whole mystery about the disappearance of Hoffa, this is an attempt at kind of telling the story behind that. I don't know if it's based on fact. I don't know if it's making it completely up, whether it's fact or reality, but it is an attempt to tell the missing story of Hoffa and what happened to Hoffa and where he disappeared. I mean, these are great actors. The acting generally is good. The problem with the acting is that because they want to use Robert De Niro throughout the entire movie, old Robert De Niro acts as young Robert De Niro, and it's like they try to make him up like he's younger, but it doesn't work. It just looks like Robert De Niro, middle-aged to old Robert De Niro. So the timeline doesn't make any sense in terms of the appearance of the actors. They look old throughout. It looks like it's flat from a timeline perspective, even though they're trying to do lots of different flashbacks to lots of different periods. I think while the acting is good, it doesn't really work because it's unconvincing. But more importantly, the movie is super boring. I mean, it just is a complete and utter Joe Pesci, sorry. I guess I mispronounced him. A complete and utter waste of time in my view. It's not worth the acting. The acting's good, but it's not that great. It is meandering. It is slow. It is completely naturalistic. Any element of romanticism, any element of choice, any element of heroism, any element of interesting choices that people might make, all gone. All gone. It is just plain boring, dull, and reflective of a certain attitude that is really, 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 I think, bad about American culture. Now, The Godfather were good movies. The Godfather were good movies. They had a plot. This movie has no plot. It's just this scene after scene after scene that kind of is leading to Hoffa's death, but it doesn't add up logically to much. It's completely naturalistic. It's completely devout of interesting action, of choice, as I said, heroism. The Godfather was a good morality tale, and if you all three of them, and I actually am one of the few people who actually like Godfather 3. It's dramatic, it's intense, it's surprising. It's the scene where towards the end of the movie where everybody gets all these things happen all at once and everything, all the kind of stuff that's being planned comes together is just a work of genius. I mean, they're really, really great parts of the Godfather, and the Godfather has a clear morality play. It gives all the character choices from the character of the son. I guess that's Al Pacino, who has to choose between joining the family business, the mafia, or being a good guy, and following his, listening to his wife and kind of staying out of the family business, which is what his intent is. To the Godfather himself, the kind of choices he has to make given the circumstances he has, and it tells the backstory of how we got to where we are. All of it about choices that are made, consequence of choices, and ultimately the complete disaster that a mafia life leads to, the complete suffering and falling apart of a mafia-ridden family. I mean, I think it really is a good movies, The Godfather. Certainly enjoyable movies. I recommend all three of them. I recommend watching them close together so you can see kind of the sequence. The characters are interesting. Here it is boring. Nothing changes. And De Niro plays it boring, so he has almost the same look in his face no matter what he's doing. If he's shooting somebody or if he's and he pretends the whole thing is like, shooting is no big deal. In The Godfather, shooting something is a big deal. There's a lot of discussion and debate about whether to do it. Not morally a big deal, but a big deal in terms of the existential consequences of this. Here, you just shoot people, and it's like, should we do it or shouldn't we? He's crossed the line, shoot him, what the hell? It really is a terrible movie. I mean, Joe Pesci, is that what? Pesci. Joe Pesci, his character is the ultimate mafia boss, but you have no sense of what that means. You have no sense. It's all kind of hush-hush. You kind of only see a little bit of the consequences, him picking up some money. But nothing of substance is ever discussed in any meeting. Nothing of substance is ever decided anywhere. It's like, he's crossed the line, kill him. Whereas in The Godfather, there's strategy. People come up with strategies. And again, the culminating scene in each movie, they do it differently, and I think brilliantly in all three of them. In The Godfather 2, I think it is, or is it in 1, where they're baptizing the baby, and while they're baptizing the baby, that is, new life is coming born, they're killing everybody around them. And they're taking control over the mafia empire. And there's just this strategy, there's thinking, there's what are we doing? What do we have to do? And it's interesting. And even though there's this obsession with gangsters, it's an obsession that then it's clear that this is a horrible life and they pay a huge cost. A huge cost. In Irishman, the consequences are like his daughter doesn't speak to him and he kind of dies alone, nobody's there, and they all seem to find religion towards the end of their life. Okay, I know lots of people whose children don't talk to them anyway. There's like, this guy murdered people, lots of people. All these mafia guys, now a lot of the mafia guys, because it's based on a true story, it tells you they were killed, they were this. Okay, but there's the existential angst and suffering that happens in The Godfather. So it's almost like, and it's told in this naturalistic way, here's a way to live. Here's one way to live. One way to live is this, killing people, extorting people. And by the way, they extort people all the time. People hand them like envelopes of cash, and it's like, oh, thank you. Here's the cash. Thank you for giving me protection. It's like these are bad guys. These are evil people. Evil people. There's none of that. They're not even glamorized. They're just normalized. Normalized. They're just, all of them are just like normal human beings. I wanted to advance in my job, and I want to make a little bit more money, so I figured out how to steal stuff. No big deal. And then the company accused me of stealing, and I had this lawyer who's a mafia lawyer, and he figured out how to save my butt, and I didn't go to jail, and and nothing happened to me. Okay. No consequences. Nobody cares. No bad stuff. No drama. No drama. By the way, the movie has zero drama. Zero drama. Yeah, he's stealing steaks. He's stealing beef. Right? No drama. No, nothing. The consequence of him stealing beef is he gets promoted into the mafia and it becomes a hitman. Because hitmen make more money than you can make stealing beef. And he makes some money, but it's not even like he's living big. No, he never lives big. You never get a sense that he has a lot of money. He's been killing all these people. So it's just like, he's just a normal guy who happened to have fallen into stealing steaks, moved him into assassinating people, and he's the one who kills Jimmy Hoffa. Big deal. This is just the way war works. Here I'm going to tell you this story. Uninteresting, boring. I hope I just saved you 4 hours. It's a truly, truly awful movie. So not just, it's boring, it's dull, and it says something about a culture that likes this, other than cheering, oh, we got to see Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in a movie together for the first time in a long time. Isn't this cool? I mean, that's okay. That I can see is cool. They were in The Godfather, and then I think they were in a movie called Heat, which was actually a well-made movie, morally really, really corrupt, but a well-made movie by the same director, by the way, who made The Last of the Mohicans. But that was an interesting movie again. I mean, I don't know what it is that we like to watch gangsters. I guess there's is it Michael Mann? Yeah, it's Michael Mann. I guess we like to watch gangsters. We like the idea that there are people out there who are living it. But in this case, they're living it, and it's like, if that's living it, who wants that? It's just, none of it's impressive. If you want to, they're not even glamorizing gangsters. They're just the guy next door. Pure naturalism and I think bad, and not even good naturalism. Really boring naturalism. Most naturalism is boring. So, yes, I hated The Irishman. Please don't watch it. Don't waste your time. Now, I know some people love it, but please don't waste your time. It's not worth the performances. Yeah, Al Pacino's pretty good as Jimmy Hoffa. Joe Pesci is good in his role. Robert De Niro's Robert De Niro. They're all good, but in some parts of it don't even make sense. But I'm not even getting into that because it doesn't matter that it doesn't make any sense because the movie's not trying to make any sense. All right, that's my quick review of The Irishman. I give it a clear thumbs down. I don't know, a 4 on a scale of 10. 4 only because it's fun to watch these actors as they age and I guess I was curious what really happened to Jimmy Hoffa. So I watched it through. So you wouldn't have to. I hope you appreciate the sacrifice. I was literally, because I watched it in bits. I usually never do that. If I would like to watch a movie all at once. I like the complete immersion in a movie. But this movie I started watching and it was so boring I had to stop. And I said, but I should probably watch it a little bit more. Maybe it gets better. So I watched a little bit more. And it's still boring, so I stopped. And then I said, I should do a review for this for the show. And if I'm going to do a review for the show, I better finish it. So just so you know, the kind of I'm kidding about sacrifice. The kind of hard work anyway, that's why I watched it. I watched it for you. All right. Chanukah is a Jewish holiday. The first day of Hanukkah starts on Sunday, I think. And a lot of what I'm going to tell you about Hanukkah, I know a lot of it, but some of the details I got from, I'm on an email distribution list, which I think is really good, by a columnist by the name of Jeff Jacoby. Jacoby, Jacoby. He is a Boston Globe columnist and has been for decades, I think. I've met Jeff. He moderated a debate I did once on inequality, not on inequality, on charity and morality at the Fort Hope Forum years ago. He's one of the best writers in America today, I think, and one of the few columnists that I actually watch, that actually read. And I find him really interesting. And he sends out an email regularly called Arguable with Jeff Jacoby. So look it up. I don't know how you search it. Just look up Arguable Jeff Jacoby, and I'm sure you'll find it and sign up. It's a really good column. He sends out an email, I think, once a week with his thoughts, and I find them really, really interesting. Right. Somebody is questioning my spelling of Chanukah. I have no idea how you spell Chanukah. I can spell it in Hebrew. I have no idea how you spell it in English. I took it from Jeff Jacoby under the assumption that he was both a good Jew and a columnist for the Boston Globe, and he wouldn't have the right spelling. So if the spelling is wrong, it's Jeff Jacoby's fault. I'm sure there are many ways to take a Hebrew word and to spell it in English. So there's a variety of different ways you can do it. So what is Hanukkah about? Right? Hanukkah is it's interesting. Hanukkah is the only Jewish holiday that is rooted in a military campaign and in military victory. And yet the holiday itself is all spiritual, although it has gained some material aspects to it because of its competition with Christmas. So Hanukkah used to be a pretty minor holiday, right? Pretty low key. not that important. And it wasn't that popular, but Chanukah falls most years, almost because it's not the same date every year because it's based on the Hebrew calendar, which is a lunar calendar, and Christmas is, and of course on the what do you call the calendar that we use? Anyway, the modern calendar, and it's based on the sun, and therefore they go out of sync for one another. But they're basically in the same part of the year. Usually there's some overlap, and a lot of Jewish kids would complain that, hey, wait a minute. I mean, the Christians get presents, they have a tree, they have lights, they celebrate, it's happy. We want to celebrate Christmas. The kids would pound the table and yell and complain, and the parents would go, oh, well, we can't celebrate Christmas because we're Jews and we have to stick to our traditions. But our traditions are dull, the kids would say. This is boring stuff. So what has happened over the years, particularly in the U.S., but it's also true, Israel makes a big deal out of Jewish holidays because it's Israel, but in the U.S., what's happened in the U.S. is, as over time, Chanukah has become a bigger and bigger and bigger holiday, basically to compete for kids' attention and to be able to maintain a Jewish family life without succumbing to a Christmas tree. So it's become this joyous holiday where gifts are given, and where, of course, there are lights because they light the menorah. We'll get to why there's a menorah in what do you call? I don't know what you call a menorah in English. It's become this big holiday. It's like, and it's 7 days, so it's a long holiday, and you get like little gifts every day instead of one big gift under the tree. And there are parties, and there's music, and there's decorations, and there's a big deal made out of it. Now, of course, both holidays, observe that time of year because that's when all holidays in pagan times were observed at the end of winter. This is why Christmas is then, and this is why Hanukkah is there. Hanukkah is not a Jewish holiday rooted in the Old Testament. There's nothing in the Old Testament about Hanukkah because it's really more of a modern holiday, although it was celebrated during Jesus' time. So it is mentioned in the New Testament as the Feast of Dedication. Chanukah is to dedicate, lachnoch. So Chanukah comes from the word dedication. And, I guess in the Gospel of John, it says at the time of the Feast of Dedication, took place in Jerusalem, Jesus did this and that. So there was such a holiday even back then in the time of Jesus, but it's not mentioned in the Old Testament at all. So what is it all about? What is this holiday? And it's interesting because fundamentally Chanukah is about Jewish assimilation and the resistance to assimilation. And in the case of Hanukkah, it's the resistance to forced assimilation. And it's a resistance to foreign culture. That's why it's somewhat ironic, and Jeff Jacoby points this out in his column, it's somewhat ironic that Hanukkah is used today as a form of assimilation, as a form of embracing the kind of holiday spirit that is Christian. Well, not Christian, but is Christmas. But the holiday itself is rooted in the attempt not to assimilate. So we're talking about 22 centuries ago, approximately 22 centuries ago. This is a time where Israel is occupied by one of the heirs to Alexander the Great. If you remember, Alexander dies relatively young. And his kingdom, his empire really, in the Mediterranean at least, is split up into multiple empires. I think, at least two ruling. And one of them is a Syrian-Greek empire, which also covers Israel. And, at the time there was a ruler called Antiochus, and again, I'm probably butchering the name because that's what I do. I butcher names. Antiochus the Fourth, who is a monarch, And he's ruling this part of the northern part, if you will. Egypt is ruled by a different heir to kind of the Alexander Empire. And, while Alexander was respectful for kind of various religion and was quite tolerant of a variety of different religions, Antiochus wasn't. He was determined to impose Hellenism, to impose Greek religion with its pagan gods, its cult of, human beauty, and you could argue some Aristotelian philosophy. He wanted to impose this on the people that he ruled. And the one place he met resistance was in what was called then Judea, today's Israel. So as a consequence of that, he made Judaism illegal. So this is a case of religious intolerance, right? And so he made things like the Sabbath observance, circumcision, the study of the Bible, were banned actually at the pain of death. And the statue of Zeus, right, was installed in the temple in Jerusalem. Pig, which Jews, to their great detriment, I might add, do not eat and is not allowed in the temple under Judaism, was kind of sacrificed to Zeus in the Jewish temple at the time, right? So they did everything to basically, demean Judaism and to persecute those who practiced. There was no, at least under this particular Greek, there was no religious tolerance. There was no religious freedom at all. So a completely oppressive religious view. Anyway, some Jews assimilated and became Greeks for this purpose and abandoned their religion and embraced kind of Greek culture and the Greek gods. And those who wouldn't were punished, right? Now, here's a question. Now, granted, the Greeks did this wrong, right? They forced assimilation. They outlawed Judaism. But I suspect that if one studies Judaism of the time and Greek culture at the time, and one compares the two, that Greek comes out ahead. Greek culture was probably significantly better. This is my problem with this holiday, is I kind of somewhat, to some extent, am rooting for the Greeks. Not really because they're being authoritarian and they're cramming their religion down people's throats, but in essence, I think Greek culture was better than Judaism. It's a problem. Now, during this period, there was one particular guy by the name of Matthias, and Matthias refused an order to sacrifice something to an idol. Right? He stuck to his Judaism. And, a Jew who had converted, an apostate Jew, actually did the sacrificing instead of Matthias. Matthias killed this guy and tore down the altar and then basically took his 5 sons, and ran into the hills and started a guerrilla war against this Syrian Greek empire. When Matthias died, his third son, Judah Maccabi, who, if you know the Maccabi games, Judah Maccabi is one of the great heroes in Jewish mythology. He took command, and with a band of fighters, he basically won battle after battle after battle. So this all started in 167 BCE. By 164 BC, they actually recaptured the temple, and they cleaned it, and they purified it, and they rededicated it to the Jewish God. Chanukah is dedication. It's to dedicate. It's a rededication. And on the 25th day of the Jewish month of Kislev, this is the month now, I guess, they lit this menorah. They lit a lamp, and they thought they only had oil for like half a day, and the lamp stayed up for 8 days, and that's why you light a menorah with 8 candles, and you keep it on for 8 days to symbolize the miracle that this little bit of oil lasted for 8 days, right? So God was on their side. Now, the war didn't end there. It took, it really took until 142, so another 2 decades to actually win the war. But they did. They actually regained control. They established a monarchy in Israel that probably had no religious freedom either, and probably persecuted people who are not Jewish, which is pretty typical, right? And, they geopolitically, it's only 20 years later that they gained the land and they became this monarchy. So, but the holiday itself is supposed to be a holiday, kind of a spiritual holiday of commitment to your belief in God, commitment to your, to the spiritual nature of Judaism, and to a commitment to the God of the Jews, and a rejection of assimilation, and particularly a rejection of the kind of Greek view of the beauty of the body, of physicality, of the veneration of beauty above, if you will, holiness, the perfection, human perfection, the centrality of the individual in human life. Now, you could argue that had the Maccabees, had these people failed, Judaism probably would have died, and Christianity would have never been born. Now, I find that alternative history very appealing, I have to say. Unfortunately, the Greeks didn't win, in the sense that the Romans took them over, and the Romans were a sad shadow of Greece and a sad imitation of Greece. And Christianity fell, and without Christianity, the Roman Empire fell, and without Christianity, I'm not sure what would have happened to the Roman Empire and how it would have fallen. So it's hard to tell what the alternative history would have been. But the perpetuation of the Jewish people is not a value to me. And certainly the rise of Christianity, which I think brought a lot of evil into the world, is not a great value in my book. I guess I'm not convinced that a Greek victory at the time would not have been better. So I'm always mixed during Hanukkah. I don't celebrate it. I haven't celebrated it for years and years and years. We decided at some point, after resisting Christmas for many years because of its association with Christianity, we decided to embrace the spirit of Christmas without the Christian aspects of Christmas. So embrace all the pagan aspects of Christmas. So now I celebrate Christmas. I've celebrated Christmas since the late 90s or middle 90s, so it's been a long time. I love Christmas. Christmas is an amazing holiday. And I basically ignore Chanukah. So to the people who still consider themselves Jews out there, I know you consider this a massive betrayal. But as I said the day before yesterday, I only consider myself Jewish in that sense, in facing anti-Semitism. Other than that, I am an objectivist. I am an American. I am an advocate for reason, self-interest, and capitalism. And that's how I define myself. I do not define myself in terms of Judaism, and I certainly don't define myself in terms of Jewish holidays, which I don't celebrate any of them. And again, Chanukah, I'm kind of pro the Greeks, which creates a real conflict. All right, I thought some of you would find that interesting, because I don't know that you knew the history. It's kind of interesting. I'm sure. Anyway, I will take super chat questions if you have any. We have one. We had one. Thoughts on Michael Mann's movie From the Insider? I don't think I've seen it. I don't think I've seen it. Is that the one about the tobacco industry? Anyway, I don't think I saw The Inside Out. I really like, one of my favorite movies from that period of time is The Last of the Mohicans. I thought Heat was a good movie, but an awful theme and awful philosophical message. Heat is really about, I mean, it's like most modern movies where the bad guys are interesting and the good guys are dull and miserable and unhappy. That's Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. But I thought it was well made and made that point very strongly. I can't remember any other Michael Mann movies. There's one, but I can't remember what it's called. There's one that happens in a taxi cab. The whole movie happens in a taxi cab. And I thought that was intense and it was good. It was interesting. It kept my attention, which is good in a movie, to keep my attention. Yeah. By the way, I'm watching another Collateral. Thank you, Collateral. I enjoyed Collateral. It was, I don't know that I'd see it again, but the one time, I think I've seen it twice, and it held my attention. It was suspenseful. It was interesting. It was it had some good moral themes to it. It showed what happens when you put a kind of a innocent layman into an emergency situation, and how an ordinary man can become heroic. There's a lot of that in a lot of movies. Hitchcock, certainly. How an ordinary man can become a hero is an important theme in movies, in action movies, and I think Collateral was a good example of that. So those are the Michael Mann movies that I liked. I don't think I've seen anything more recent of his that I liked that over the last, I don't know, 20 years now? Collateral was done in the 90s, so probably I don't know anything of Michael Mann's in the last 20 years that I really liked. Okay, what are we doing now? We are going to do... So I'm looking for videos of different, people who have large YouTube channels, because I found that after Christian splices this up and make them independent videos, they do quite well, and they have a lifespan that's quite lengthy, and I get a lot of subscriptions as a consequence of me criticizing some of these lefties. So maybe we're converting some of them. Maybe we're converting some of them. Maybe we're just attracting different people to come and watch these videos. So I'm looking for more videos to comment on. So let me ask you guys this. If you guys see a video that you think I should comment on, whether it's from somebody on the right or somebody on the left or somebody in the middle, or the only ones that I don't find easy to comment on are ones that are funny. Because it's hard to deal with the humor. So I want serious videos, interviews, Joe Rogan interviews, other people's interviews. If you see an interview, if you see a video of somebody on YouTube and you say, I wonder what Yaron would have to say about this. I wonder what his take on this would be. Then, send it to me. And, I'll look at it. And if I think it's worthy, we will do it. So, as I said, I'm looking for these. I don't have a lot of time to kind of browse through the millions of movies on there. And you guys watch this stuff anyway, so you might as well pull it out. I don't want to rip Joe Rogan, because I want to be on a show. So I don't mind ripping Joe Rogan's guests, but not Joe Rogan. I'll rip Joe Rogan after I'm on a show, but I don't want to destroy any chance I've ever got of ever being on a show. So that's why I don't want to rip Joe Rogan himself. I'm just being, strategic a little bit. It's good to be strategic. If you see a video of a politician making a comment, I don't know, Pete, what's his name? The guy whose name I cannot pronounce. I butcher everybody else's name. His name I can't even pronounce. Or Bret Weinstein or Sam Harris or any of these guys that you guys probably watch, or some of you watch, on the right, on the left, on the alt-right, on the alt-left. If you see Bernie, particularly if there's some gems out of Bernie or Elizabeth Warren or any of this stuff, let me know, and I'll take it on. So I will be your voice in taking these people on. All right, let's do Kyle. It's kind of what we've done before, and then I'll do your Super Chat questions after Kyle. Let's see, how do I do this? That's right, I press on this button. There he is. There's Kyle. Yeah, Kyle's particularly bad, but he's very articulate. I just actually saw Kyle on Joe Rogan. I saw a segment of it. I was thinking of doing that, but it wasn't that good. But he's very articulate, and he has this thing down, which it's something that I've observed about all these guys who are very successful, and how they get their audiences is he just throws out facts, and we'll see this in a minute. Throws out information with confidence and moral certainty and moral outrage. That, like Joe Rogan goes, I mean that. And he's articulate and he's confident. So, well, how would we question that? There's no way you could question those facts. So we might question some of those facts now. All right, so we're going to talk about healthcare and Kyle, and just watch the technique. The technique. Jimmy Dore is another one, right? Jimmy Dore, I had a video of Jimmy Dore. I might do Jimmy Dore next time. The problem with Jimmy is he puts too much humor into it. I find humor difficult. But if you find ones that are not primarily humor of Jimmy Dore's, then I find humor difficult to comment on. All right. I think we are going to stop the Super Chat because I'm going to be here all night at this rate. So, all right, thank you. We'll run it there. Save it for next time. We'll have another show on Thursday. Thursday we'll be with Amy. Amy couldn't make it today, so she'll be with me on Thursday. So Thursday, those of you who like to know in advance, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be doing a show with me and Amy. All right, here we go. Kyle, go for it.
Here's a healthcare story that unfortunately is far too common in America, so you don't hear much about this from the media at all.
Notice how the left complains about the media too. I love that. Everybody complains about the media. Like the right thinks the media is just in the hands of the left, and it's completely left propaganda machine. And the left goes, oh, the media is completely corporate. They couldn't care less about Americans, and they're completely on the right.
Stories like this, because to them, it's not even really a story. It's called Tuesday. This happened. We could go on one road.
By the way, there's a reason this isn't a story. We'll get to that when he tells the story.
In America, that has 20 houses, and probably 3 of those people have a story exactly like this.
3 out of 10.
But it's noteworthy.
30% of Americans have a story like this. Watch this. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that he says, and people go, yeah, 3 out of 10. 30% of Americans. Really?
And this person who spoke up did something that's actually pretty courageous. So let me show you here. This is Lori, Lori. Her Twitter handle is @ICounterSpin. And it says the following. I'm in tears. My husband is so sick. Our debt costs more than we make each month. And here's the best, cheapest plan available to me to keep my husband alive this coming year. There's no way I can afford this. No way.
Now, there's a reason the media doesn't cover this, because it's one story. And has the media covered lots and lots and lots and lots of stories about people losing their health care, people not having insurance, people suffering, millions of stories. So what's he talking about? That they haven't covered one more? Another one what is this? If not just an appeal to emotion, right? We'll talk about the concretes, but a complete appeal to emotion. Yes, her husband's dying. I'm sorry, he's sick. And he's going to die if I can't get insurance. Really? Now, is that true in America today? Do people literally die if they can't get insurance? I mean, as far as I know, if you're poor, so poor that you can't get this insurance, you're probably eligible for Medicaid. You can go on Medicaid and get health care. Now, granted, Medicaid sucks. It's a government program. It really, really sucks. There's actually studies that show that people without insurance get better treatment than people with Medicaid. But if you want insurance, somebody else to pay for it, Medicaid will do it, right? If you're poor enough that you can't afford insurance. Also, I don't know any hospital, indeed it's illegal for hospitals, to turn patients away if their life is threatened. So why not take your husband to an emergency room? Why don't appeal to charity? I mean, there are a million different things you could do, lady, other than bitch and complain about the cost of insurance. Now, we'll talk about why the cost of insurance is so high. Nobody, God forbid Kyle should actually talk about that. But, all right, I mean, it's sad that your husband is sick. Now, why are you in the position where you're buying insurance off Obamacare? Did neither of you work? Do you not get health insurance through your employer? Did you have health insurance through your employer, now you've lost it? Well, why not question why you had health insurance to begin with through your employer and you didn't have health insurance yourself? Then you wouldn't have lost it when you lost your job. Maybe you lost your job because you're sick. But in any case, if you owned the health insurance policy, instead of your employer owning the health insurance policy, you would have still had it. So why aren't these the kind of questions that people want to consider? Why aren't these the kind of questions that people think about? Why is the obvious question that comes up is, how can this happen in America in 2019? How can this happen? I mean, why isn't the government doing it? All right.
And then she shows the details of
He had the plan.
The
It's
plan that's
expensive.
available to her, the best plan that's available to her, by the way. And look,
Do you know why it's so expensive? One reason why it's so expensive is because she's buying this plan after her husband is already sick. Now, the insurance company can't price it that way. Indeed, it should be much more expensive than this. This is way too cheap. Because they know he's sick. But they're not allowed to use that information in pricing the health insurance plan. They have to assume he's healthy because they have to cover pre-existing conditions. Now, if you cover pre-existing conditions, then what happens to the insurance rates? They go through the roof. It's not insurance anymore. It's a redistribution of wealth plan. Now, it's expensive to redistribute wealth from healthy people to sick people. But that's what we're doing. That's what health insurance is in America today. It's not insurance. Pre-existing conditions should not be covered by insurance. Now, if you owned your own insurance plan, if you bought long-term insurance, if you bought it when you were healthy, under the conditions, and I think these conditions would exist in a free market, that the insurance company couldn't take it away from you if you got sick, then it would be a completely different story. Or, when you're young, you should be able to buy insurance against pre-existing conditions, against you getting sick and having a problem finding insurance at that point. So there are all kinds of market solutions to the pre-existing conditions problem. And even today, when you can't just impose the market right now because the market's been screwed up for so many years that one could argue that for a while the government's going to have a role here. You could have all kind of risk pools that deal with pre-existing conditions without destroying insurance markets for the rest of us, for those who don't have pre-existing conditions. Again, that's where the thinking needs to go. How do we create healthy, competitive, value-adding, individualized health insurance industry rather than what we have today? But that's not where anybody like Kyle can go, or anybody today, left or right, can go. They immediately go to collectivistic solutions. They immediately think what the government can do. They immediately talk about the failure of the American healthcare system. Yeah, it's failing. I agree that it's failing. I'm not for repealing Obamacare without replacing it, but the replacement has to be free market healthcare. And there's a lot of ways to do it. But at the end of the day, it means getting the government out of healthcare, which at the end of the day means that the government doesn't do Medicare or Medicaid either. Because Medicare and Medicaid completely and utterly distort the insurance markets and the healthcare markets and the pricing of healthcare. And until you get rid of them, everything you do is better than
you see a monthly premium of $1,549.91.
That's expensive. Cheaper than my insurance.
A deductible of
cheaper than my insurance because I have to pay for his pre-existing condition. That's why my insurance is expensive.
$13,000 and an out-of-pocket maximum of $16,300.
I don't know where this woman lives, but I've never seen a $13,000 deductible. Because I've actually looked, because I want an insurance policy with a $13,000 deductible. If anybody can find an insurance policy with a $13,000 deductible, please let me know. Well, I know it doesn't exist in Puerto Rico. And because I want that. I want a high deductible. I want insurance to be insurance, to cover me only when I need it, which is in an emergency, when expenses are going to be massive. I don't buy car insurance to cover scratches. I don't buy car insurance to replace the oil. I don't buy car insurance to replace the tires. I buy car insurance for an accident, big accident. If my car's totaled, if the costs are going to be thousands of dollars. All right, Holt on the Super Chat questions. I told you to Holt a few minutes ago. You're blowing this up. So I'll get to all your questions, but you got to stop asking them. All right, let's go on. I'm probably not going to show the whole video. I just want to give you some illustrations. So first, notice the appeal to emotion, right? Which they all do, right? Republicans do the same thing. They'll go, here's a story about an illegal immigrant who murdered this family. Illegal immigration, it raises crime in America. And what's the two got to do with one another? One story does not make a statistic. One story does not prove anything. And again, instead of asking questions about immigration, it's immediately we have to outlaw that. Instead of asking questions about insurance here, you immediately have to replace it all with a one-size-fits-all. All right, here we go.
Let me ask you a question. How many people, what percentage of people you know have $16,300 laying around? My generation?
What does laying around mean? Oh, come on, guys. You're not stopping with the questions. Stop. What does laying around mean? I don't know anybody who has $16,000 laying around. In a bank account? I know quite a few people. But what's the point? We go into debt to buy cars. We go into debt to buy homes. We go into debt for the grocery store. Why wouldn't you go into debt to pay off your health bills, your medical bills? You pay it off over time. It's a big expense. $16,000. Okay. Why is that so shocking? Did this woman buy her car with cash? Did Kyle buy his car with cash? And I think healthcare is more important than a car. So you finance it the way you need to finance it. I used to live on credit cards. I was in massive debt when I was in my 30s. So what?
Has no savings. The millennial generation has nothing in savings.
That's right, because you go out to eat every night, you drink, you live it up, and you don't think about the future and you don't save. Now, I have to admit, I didn't save until probably my late 30s, maybe until I was 40. So what? So that's what debt is for. It's to cover you over when you don't have savings, when you have a big expense you don't expect. If you've taken my finance stuff, I'm not anti-debt. I actually think debt is a good thing. Now, yes, they have, as Jonathan says, they have worthless degrees and huge student debt. But okay, don't get a worthless degree. And if you're going to take on huge amounts of student debt, get a valuable degree. But that's on you, the student. You know, if you're going to study English, or even worse, feminist studies or whatever it is, gender studies, don't take on debt. You know, it kind of makes sense because you're probably not going to make money. But that's on you, your generation.
78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
All right, here we go. I cut him off because I was too eager. Here we go.
78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Let me just say bullshit on that one. But this is the kind of stuff he says, right? With passion. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Okay, there was one survey early in 2018 that showed that in a particular group, there was asked, I can't remember who asked the question. I researched this. 78% said they live paycheck to paycheck. Paycheck to paycheck was never defined. 78% of Americans, really? 78% of Americans? I mean, that means only 22% of Americans don't live on paycheck to paycheck. Yet, the upper middle class plus the wealthy is more than 22%. And don't tell me the upper middle class live paycheck to paycheck. And if they do, then that's really their problem. I have no sympathy for them. I mean, anybody in the middle class, what does paycheck to paycheck mean? I mean, I, for many years, spent my entire paycheck and didn't save. Is that what you mean by paycheck to paycheck? Okay, if you have 2 kids and if you're starting out in your career, and yeah, it took me until my 40s until I had making enough money to put money aside and not live paycheck to paycheck. Who cares? But it's 78% is just a lie. Other surveys have shown it to be 60, others 40. Nobody knows. It's not a legitimate question. There's no statistic that tells us this number. But of course, you choose the highest number to make your point. You say it with confidence, with a little bit of moral outrage. 78%. It's like, 90% of scientists believe X. Has anybody measured this? No. Has there really been a survey? No. So you can pick and choose your silly statistics, but they're all silly. They're all meaningless.
78%. That's basically 8 out of 10.
With a
live
lot
paycheck
of
to
moral
paycheck.
outrage. There you go. Liar.
I'm speechless.
Yeah, me too.
This is the best plan that they offer. It's $18,600 a year for the premium, and with a deductible of $13,000.
I mean, if somebody's sick and their husband is dying, they basically have 2 choices. I've told you this before, right? They have 2 choices. They can come to me and ask for my help, and I might, if I like them and if I have spare cash, I might help them out. And I might provide them with the money necessary to treat this disastrous disease. But I might not. I might turn them away. That's my decision, my choice. The alternative is for them to pull a gun out and force me to pay. And that's what Kyle wants. He wants everybody who has one of these, who's sick, who can't afford their insurance, to knock on my door and pull out a gun and steal my money. That's what he wants. That's what he thinks constitutes a moral, just, ethical society. A society of highway robbery. A society in which those who have are robbed to pay for those who don't. Now, I don't consider that legit. I don't consider thievery legitimate. And I don't consider democracy, where we vote to steal people's money, a way to legitimize thievery. Thievery, theft, stealing is immoral, no matter if done by an individual or a majority or a gang or a group or the mafia or anybody. Stealing is stealing is stealing. You don't get to live off of me without my consent. And I have not consented. So you want to present it as some moral outrage, but the moral outrage is that you expect me to pay for her health care. Not expect. Sorry, expect is too nice. You demand. You want to put a gun to my back and force me to pay for her health care. No. Not doing it. And hopefully, never do it. As it is, I pay for her health care. because my premiums are so expensive on my insurance.
Guys,
He's speechless. It's amazing.
I know that this is
The
just
moral outrage.
Tuesday in America, but it shouldn't be. So this is a story that deserves attention, and this is a story that's only going to get attention from people like you and from shows like mine covering it.
True.
It's not going to. CNN's not going to talk about this. MSNBC's not going to talk about this. Fox News is not going to talk.
He's even blaming MSNBC for being too right wing. Just it's pretty funny. But it's pretty funny how left and right view each other. That to me is part of the entertaining value, right? It's just think about what it means that everybody thinks the media is bad, no matter what. I mean, there's no objectivity anywhere out there.
The nightly news is not going to talk about this.
But Kyle
Just so
is,
you know,
don't
they
worry.
view poverty as like a personal failing, like an individual failing.
The media, MSNBC, views poverty as a personal failing. Even Fox doesn't view it that way. What are you talking about?
Like, oh, you're just not of sufficiently moral character.
There are more of these, sob stories on the New York Times and anywhere else than almost any other coverage. What are you talking about? And the same, by the way, Fox. Just watch Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson cares. Didn't you see the story about the evil hedge fund guys? Tucker Carlson cares.
You didn't work hard enough. And if you respond to them, well, no, I actually work a full-time job. Like, oh, we'll get a better one. You see their perception of the system? It's that the system is pristine, and you need to try to fit yourself into that system. And
Notice the straw manning here. Now, I would never say the system's pristine. The system's awful. The system is actually designed to fail and designed to penalize that woman and to penalize the average working guy. The system as we have today is destructive to the workers of America. The problem is the workers of America want to vote for candidates like Trump and Sanders who would destroy it even further, who would make it even worse for them. But yeah, the system's not pristine. The system's a disaster. And the fact that somebody would have to pay $1,500 like that for a policy with $13,000 deductible is outrageous. But that's a consequence of the mixed economy, not a consequence of what you think of as markets and capitalism.
you can't do it in a way that's beneficial to you, that's your problem. Our perception is the opposite. Our perception is the system should be crafted to meet the needs of the people.
To meet the needs of the people. To meet the needs of the people. When people need iPhones, the system should provide it to them. When they need food, the system should provide it to them. It does so well in Venezuela. No, the system should be designed to allow people to pursue their happiness free of coercion, to allow people to pursue their values, to make choices, to design their lives the way they see fit, and suffer the consequences of that design, suffer the consequences of their choice of values. But the system should be designed to leave them free, to live their lives free, to live their lives based on their own judgment, based on their own rational thought, in pursuit of their own values. And if they fail at that, they fail. And if they succeed, they succeed. And if they fail and they want help, they can ask for it. But the system shouldn't be designed for people's needs other than the need to be left alone, other than the need to be free. That's the only need that the system should be designed to provide.
If the system is above us and all these people are struggling to find their little spot in that system,
Under socialism is
well,
more
doesn't that
above us
system
than
just
this.
suck?
Much more above
because
us.
it's not doing its job. Shouldn't the whole point of any system be to meet the needs of the people?
To meet the needs of the people, to be free, not to meet the needs of the people. Not to meet the needs of the people per se. People can meet their own needs. I don't need you or some bureaucrat or some politician to give me what I need. I just need to be left alone so I can go and pursue it myself.
in an efficient and effective way?
No.
It's like,
And it can't be
again,
done.
they view it as a personal failing. Oh,
Because the fact is, and this is an important point, is you can't know what I need. Nobody can know what I need except me. Only I can make value choices. Because what do you need? Needs are, a broader sense of need. Needs are your values. I need a shiny sports car. You don't know what my needs are. You don't know what my values are. Only I know what they are. So this is the falsehood of central planning. You cannot serve people's needs because you don't know what they are. When I'm 20, I don't need full health insurance coverage. I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm a risk taker. I want to pour all my money into my startup. And I'm willing to take the risk that I'll get sick. That's my need. But you, Kyle, would tax me and provide me with the health care, which I don't need right now. Do that later. This is a really, really important point about capitalism, about the relationship between politics and us. And it's not about Kyle. This is everybody, left and right. Everybody believes in the state running our lives to any degree, other than in protecting us, other than serving as a self-defense mechanism. You can't know what my priorities are. For example, we have decided that everybody needs to save. So we have Social Security. Not that that's saving, but let's pretend it is for a second. And the Chilean alternative, which is better than the American, is forced saving. The government doesn't take your Social Security, but you are forced to save a certain percentage of your income every month. That's forced saving. But what if I don't need to save? What if I don't want to save? What if my hierarchy of values right now, it's more important for me to take that 12% that is stolen from me through Social Security and invest it in my business? Or pay for health care because I've got a sick kid? Or pay for my parents, or whatever. No central planner can know my values, know my needs, to use his language. That's why central planning has to fail. There are the economic reasons, but that's the fundamental ethical reason why it has to fail. Epistemological reason why it has to fail. The ethical and epistemological reason is only you, using your mind, knowing you, who you are, can choose your values for you. Nobody else can do it. And only you can do it using your mind, using reason, using facts, using reality. It's hard even for you to figure out what your values are. You want somebody else to do it for you? But that's what central planning always necessitates. Whether it's central planning of trade, whether it's central planning of retirement, whether it's central planning of medicine. Somebody says Hayek's fatal conceit. No, Hayek gets it all wrong. Hayek says it's computationally impossible to figure it out. I'm saying it's metaphysically impossible to figure out. It's epistemologically impossible to figure out because the nexus of value is you. It's not that we don't have enough data, we don't have enough powerful enough computer. In the fatal conceit, he kind of says it's a weakness of reason. No. It's because we're individuals. It's because as individuals, only individuals can think for themselves. Only individuals can desire for themselves. Only individuals can need stuff for themselves. And therefore, only individuals can decide on their values and on their needs. All right, I'm going to do another couple of minutes, and then, God, I don't know how we're going to do all these super chat questions.
Oh, you don't have good health care? What'd you do wrong? Oh, that's not the way that makes sense. Guys,
oh my God.
Other developed countries don't have to deal with this.
No, people just die waiting. Did you ever, when you was a kid, the Dr. Seuss book, There's a section there waiting for this, waiting for that. I love that book. That's such a good book. You know, in the UK, under NHS, in Canada, you just wait to die. You wait for the MRI. You wait to see the doctor. And a big chunk of people just die waiting. And there's no statistic of how many people die waiting, because that's not how they categorize things. But yes, they don't have to deal with these kind of problems. That's right. They steal the money up front. They distribute it inefficiently, but that's an understatement. They distribute it in ways that are impossible to distribute, because central planning, as I said, is impossible, in ways that actually destroy human life.
We spent $7 trillion in Iraq when all is said and done.
Not true, but a minor issue.
By the year 2053. That's when you add the interest on it.
Maybe by 2053 it's true. I don't know. I have no idea how you calculate that. But good luck. 7 trillion is a good number.
7 trillion.
Really?
And we can't afford Medicare for all? Nobody batted an eye.
Nobody says we can't afford it. Of course we can afford it. We just print the money. What's the problem?
On the cost of the Iraq War. Nobody even talked about the cost of the Iraq War. They just said, it's a moral necessity. We have to do it. Now, of course, it wasn't a moral necessity, but it shows you that if they think something is a moral necessity, then they just do it.
This is, by the way, a point I've talked about many times. If we're convinced that Medicare is a moral necessity, we will do it. We will do it.
So why are they not doing that for healthcare? Because they don't care. They have good healthcare. They don't care that you don't. Oh, my God. $7 trillion in Iraq, at least $2 trillion in Afghanistan.
$2 trillion, it's $1 trillion. I did a show on this a while back. Maybe by 2053 again.
$14 trillion bailout of Wall Street.
Bailout of Wall Street? All that money? I mean, I'm against the bailout, but all that money came back and it wasn't $14 trillion. Where does he get these numbers from? I mean, again, he says it like it's obvious, like everybody knows these numbers. $14 trillion bailout of Wall Street? Top was $800 billion. Awfully big number. Horribly big number. But all of that was paid back with interest. Government made money on top.
This is where we're squandering everything. But regular people who will go bankrupt from healthcare bills, they get nothing. They get nothing. 500,000 bankruptcies every year from healthcare bills.
All right. Enough of this. All right. So you get the point, right? Not asking the right questions, emotional appeal, moral outrage, and making up numbers. That is typical punditry today, left and right. Again, the right does exactly the same thing on things like immigration. It does exactly the same thing on any kind of status program, trade, all the stuff. The one I was going to use, although I'll just say this and then I'll go on. Trump's the greatest economy the world has ever seen. I mean, it's exactly the same thing. Like, stock market has gone up 50% over the last 3 years. And now that's true. That is a real number. But it went up over that in the first 3 years of Obama. It went up more than that in the first 3 years of Clinton, and I could go back and find other presidents that did better. Is that really the measure? Economic growth they just revised it upwards. They just revised it up from 1.9% to 2.1. 2.1% is that's Obama numbers. That's anemic. That's pathetic. It should be well over 3. So those are the kind of, and again, unemployment rate, 3.5, true, good number, great number. But we used to care about labor participation rate, how many people actually in the working as a percentage of the population, not just people looking for work, which is what the unemployment number is. And you could go on and how they spin numbers, So when Obama was president, the right always talked about the labor participation rate. With Trump in the White House, they always talk about the unemployment number. And nobody cares. The media doesn't care. Nobody cares. Nobody points this out. Nobody makes an issue of it. Nothing. The left flips, the right flips in terms of the numbers they use, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. But, it's what sells, because Kyle has 230,000 Twitter followers and almost 750,000 YouTube subscribers, and he's lightweight as compared to some of the other lefties and righties out there. And Tucker Carlson has a show on Fox, one of the most watched shows ever. So go figure. The American people want to be deceived, want to be lied to, want to be manipulated. They don't know any better. And instead of listening to facts, logic, truth, which is what you get here, you're the lucky ones, that's what they listen to. All right. Have you ever seen Tarkovsky's Mirror? No. Stalker is another one you may enjoy. Haven't seen either one of those. I'll put them on the list. Is there a phrase, word, to express one's love for America, a free market capitalist individual America, that's not nationalist or statist? Yeah, I mean, I would say I love Americanism. I'm pro-Americanism, and then go on to describe what Americanism is. And for that, one second, I'll be right back. You should use this book, edited by Jonathan Hoenig, and I have an essay in here, and a lot of really good people. Of course, Ayn Rand has an essay in here, and Leonard Peikoff has an essay in here. So get the textbook of Americanism right here. And so it's Americanism is the term. A love of Americanism, a love of the ideas behind the establishment of America. I mean, I like to say I love America. I love America of the founding. I love America of the principles of the founding. I love the greatest political document in all of human history, and one of my favorite documents, period, is the Declaration of Independence. It is a magnificent document. And that is Americanism. American is the Declaration of Independence. And that's what we love. So, but you can say, and I think it's legitimate to say, I love America, without it having to be nationalistic, particularly if you condition it on, I love America as the land of the free. I love America as a land of individuals. I love America as the beacon of capitalism, the way it used to be. And used to be means a long time ago, not anymore. Advice on how artists can spread objectivist values through their artwork. If you're an artist, here's my advice. Forget about objectivism. That's my advice. Be a great artist. If you're a great artist, your sense of life will come across. Your sense of life will be reflected in the art. Make great art. Don't try to make objectivist art. That is a disaster. Don't try to make art that reflects objectivist values. Make art that is meaningful to you, that reflects you, who you are, what you are. And to the extent that you are an objectivist and have integrated objectivism into your values and have a good sense of life, which is not necessary, then you will help spread objectivism. I mean, if we can bring back a love of the human body, a love of heroism, a love of vitality, a love of, heroism is the best word for this. Right? A love of heroes, but again, not the superficial Hollywood modern heroes. Certainly not the anti-heroes of Hollywood or the non-heroes of a movie like The Irishman. But if you can bring back intelligent heroes, whether in movies or in literature or in painting or in anything, then you will help spread objectivist ideas. But don't think about objectivist ideas when you're doing your art. Think about your personal values and what values you personally want to concretize in this artwork. And then do it. And study. That's the other thing. Art is hard. Art requires knowledge. It's not enough to have talent. You have to know stuff. If you're a painter or sculptor, you have to know anatomy. You have to understand perspective. You have to understand movement. You have to understand how muscles move and function, and how, from different perspectives, what effect that has. Study light. Study Vermeer. Study Caravaggio. Study Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. Figure out what makes the Mona Lisa a great piece of art. Figure out why Michelangelo's David is a great piece of sculpture. Look at the 19th century academic painters, who I think are fantastic. Figure it out. Study. See too many objectivists who think that objectivism is enough. That's it. They don't have to know anymore. And they've got some talent. Be a painter. Be an artist. Not an illustrator, which I think a lot of people confuse illustration with art. And a lot of people today who are considered good artists, even within the objectivist world, are much more illustrators than artists. Really study the great artists of the past. And really understand. Try to understand what great art really is. Ayn Rand says that painting, the medium of painting is color. What does that mean? How do you evaluate that? How do you use that, right? You know, and in making art, right? So not all art is literature. Literature is conceptual. Visual art, you know, the essence of cinema is the visual, not the dialogue, not the music, not the acting, but the visual. Now, cinema has to be all integrated, but you have to know what you're doing. And I think there are way too many people who don't know what they're doing in terms of making art. Okay, you have been in Brazil this year and looked optimistic with our government, but the president is very connected with new evangelicals, political groups. Let me know your thoughts on that. Yeah, I mean, I'm worried about Bolsonaro. My optimism is rooted in his economic advisors and in supposedly the promise he's made not to intervene in the economic direction that they take, and that he's given them that freedom for the most part so far. That is where my optimism is rooted. But at the end of the day, I don't know if that's sustainable. It's probably not, and I don't follow Brazilian politics enough for long enough to really understand, how much he's living up to that and how much he's not. So whether I should be optimistic or not, I'd have to know a lot more about what's going on right now. But from my perspective, the fact that he was willing to give autonomy to his economic advisors, and the fact that they are good, better than the economic advisors in any other country that I know of, leads me to some hope that they will get stuff done. His evangelical roots and his evangelical support and his support among mystics and nationalists is super scary. Super, super scary. Hi, Yaron. Do you find any difference between Islamophobia and anti-Semitism? I don't like the idea of calling someone either of these terms on account of them criticizing the religions themselves or even disapproving of people who hold those beliefs. I don't think there is such a thing as Islamophobia. I think Islamophobia, you can be anti-Islam, and I think there is such a thing, and I think that there are people who are blindly anti anybody who's Muslim, blindly anti the religion in an ugly way, and treat people of that religion in an ugly way, no matter what their character is, no matter what their actions are. So even secular Muslims are sometimes treated bad. I wouldn't call that Islamophobia. Phobia is something different. You wouldn't call it Jewphobia. It's anti-Semitism, anti-Jews. This is anti-Muslims. Now, the thing with anti-Muslims is that it's complicated to differentiate the proper fear of Muslims, the proper hatred of the religion because it has motivated so many people to kill, and applying that fear and that resentment and that anger and that hatred towards people who have nothing to do with the use of the religion in that way. So you have to be able to rationally separate between people who advocate for the religion, the variation of the religion, the understanding of the religion that leads to violence, and those you should exclude from society, you should discriminate against, and those that, have this peaceful interpretation of it, which, I think you still need to screen them because it's hard for us to know who's who, but you shouldn't be discriminating against them just because they're religious unless you know, if there is evidence that they're not radicals. But to the extent that they're radicals, sure, you should discriminate against them. You shouldn't have anything to do with them. Alicia, you really shouldn't encourage the people in the super chat to keep asking me questions because, you should really care about my health. It's not fair. All right. So Islamophobia is a problem because there's a reason to be afraid, but it's incumbent upon us to be able to also differentiate between who to be afraid of and whom not. And it's justice demands that, and our survival demands that. We need to know who the enemy is, and by default, who the enemy is not, and treat them accordingly. To be conscious is to be conscious of something in a certain form, by a means, a body. But why must this be a living body in a strictly biological sense? Just to avoid a mind-body dichotomy? No, because that's the way it is, right? That's, is, right? Consciousness is attached to a body. There is no consciousness. There's zero evidence that consciousness can be not attached to a body. Consciousness is, from every piece of empirical evidence we have, and by logic, because it is a biological function, it is a product of biology. So it's not, there's no, if somebody wants to present a theory that presents a theory of consciousness that is separate from a body and explains how that can be, then okay. But I don't think you can have such a theory because it would be based on nothing. There's no observational evidence of it. There's no way to test it. It's a meaningless thought experiment, and therefore it's arbitrary, and therefore it's unworthy of consideration. The arbitrary is unworthy of consideration. Hey, Yaron, why are you always angry? I'm not always angry. Am I always angry? Well, in my personal life, I'm almost never angry. So I focus all my anger for the show to concentrate it here and inflict it on you. I guess because the show deals with politics and deals with things that I get angry about. I'm an angry elf. I'm not an elf. It's conceptually impossible because concepts have to be tied to reality. Concepts have to be tied to some existential evidence, some evidence in the world. Otherwise, they're meaningless. Every concept that we have, if it's really yours, if it's really you, if it's really understood, you have to be able to reduce it to observations, to facts in reality. There's no way to reduce consciousness without a body to an observational fact in reality, or to anything we know in physics or biology or in science or in any fact that we know about the world. It's just hypothetical, which is meaningless and therefore has no meaning. That's why things like string theory, and I don't know anything about string theory, so this is just from people who do know, who told me. String theory is not attached to anything, doesn't relate to anything in the world, is not connected to anything. It's useless, it's a waste of time. It's manipulation of mathematical symbols for no reason, with no value, massively wasting people's IQ, brain power. Even the things we imagine are based on reality. So if you imagine an iPhone, you're imagining a phone that can do things that that an iPod can do, that something else can do, that something else can do, and I combine them into something new. But every piece of that thing can link to an observation. But consciousness is a primary. There's no pieces of consciousness. Consciousness is the beginning. And if you can't tie that to something in reality, consciousness in a non-body thing, then it's a waste of time. The same with string theory. That's a fundamental theory that is not connected to anything. So, yes, we make inventions by imagination. Is reconstructing the facts of reality, the things in reality, in a way that they've never been constructed. And then you have to test it, and you have to see if it's possible. Yeah, so you can tell stories about a consciousness without a body, but that's about it. You can't actually have a theory about it because there's nothing to theorize about. Are suicide rates going up because the West is becoming less free and more nihilistic? In a sense, yes, particularly the nihilism. Suicide rates are going up, in my view. Why am I wearing these? It's hot in here. Suicide rates are going, this is a complex question, which I'll do a show on. But suicide rates are going on because of the alienation that is so prevalent in our society today. Lack of purpose, lack of meaning, materialism, where the only alternative is a mystical religion. So you've got mysticism and materialism competing for meaning, and neither one can provide you with meaning. Neither one can provide you with real meaning in life. I think lack of self-esteem because of educational system and because of nihilism, lack of a sense of, you can't have self-esteem without purpose, and people have no purpose and they have no self-esteem, and they don't trust themselves, they don't like themselves, they don't enjoy their life. Why live? Why keep this going? They suffer. They're lonely because they can't relate to other people, because they don't have the self-esteem to engage with other people, and other people don't want to have anything to do with them because they don't have a purpose and they're not interesting people. But all of that is a consequence of our educational system, which is not geared towards teaching people. A self-esteem movement that taught people they didn't have to earn self-esteem, they just got it. They just had to convince themselves, which left them empty. An educational system that leaves people with no purpose and no tools to discover a purpose, because no reason, because they don't learn how to use their reason, how to use their mind. A political, economic system that's mixed, that makes promises that can't fulfill them, that causes people to lose their jobs and not understand why, and blame the Chinese, and I can't do anything about the Chinese, and we're going to go to war or not, and why are we at war, and people lie to me all the time. And there's I did a show on the Afghanistan war and how they've lied to us the whole time, and they continue to lie about it, and Trump continues to lie about it. Well, people see that and they go, what's the point? And Kaya lies, and Tucker lies, and Fox lies, and CNN lies, and everybody lies. And people who are not value-oriented don't understand where to even look for this. Then it's just overwhelming, and it's unintelligible. This is, by the way, the same reason why we have conspiracy theories. Because life is so unintelligible, at least conspiracy theories explain stuff. I know, and hopefully many of you know, that they explain stuff in stupid, irrational, illogical ways. But at least it's an explanation. But then there are people who are not willing to give that explanation, or are convinced by the conspiracy theories that things are so nutty, that, it's not worth living. Jonathan, you always do great on Fox Business. He's going to Fox Business now. So he's leaving the show. Keep up the good work on Fox. The lone voice of reason on Fox Business News, Jonathan Hoenig, who should get a show on Fox. That would be a fun show. And he'd invite me. How fun would that be? Right? 10 years from now, will it no longer be too early for politics objectivist movement? I'm pessimistic. I think it's going to be a lot more than 10 years. I'm sorry. I just think seeing the progress and seeing what's going on and seeing my subscriptions tick up a little bit, 10 years, let's say, let's be optimistic, 1,000 people a year. In 10 years, I'll have 27,000 followers. No. For us to be ready for politics, just to be self-centered a little bit here, for us to be successful in politics, my show would have to have a million subscribers. When we hit 1 million subscribers, then we should be ready for politics. Now, it could be that I'm just bad at this. So somebody like me, an objectivist, whether it's me or somebody else, 1 million plus subscribers, then we're ready for politics. Before that, forget it. You say wife-beating drunks wouldn't get help under capitalism. I'd never said that. But when you go to a soup kitchen, they don't ask if you're a wife-beating drunk before they give you food. But will soup kitchens exist under capitalism? Under proper capitalism. Under capitalism motivated by rational, selfish people. I don't know. Would the soup kitchen have criteria by which they give soup? Now, you'd say there'll still be churches, maybe, but I'm talking about a rationally self-interest, objectivist culture. Would there be soup kitchens? And I'm not sure they would be. I mean, soup kitchens open to everybody. And if somebody was known as a white-beating drunk, I don't think people would help him. And that's fine with me. I don't think he deserves help. And I think there are all kinds of categories of people who don't deserve help and who wouldn't get help in a truly rational society, in a truly egoistic society. I think many, many people would get help, but the help would be contingent on deserving it. And some people don't deserve help, and therefore would not get it. Is wanting revenge second-handed? Is looking for evil to punish not consistent with ego and suffering? No, I think revenge is very rational. You want evil to suffer. And evil suffering is a vindication of justice in the world. Evil suffering is also, they stay away from you. So if people have done you harm, it's completely rational for you to want bad things to happen to them. So partially because they can't do harm to you and other people around you and other people you care about. So I have no problem with revenge. I mean, one of my favorite stories is the Count of Monte Cristo. I think you can obsess about it. I think it'll become an obsession. And of course, depends on how much evil was done to you by the person and, what your values are. But I don't think revenge per se is second-handed, always. I think it often is, but not always. Is it anti-Semitism mainly motivated by fear or envy? Well, to some extent, yes, but not only. I think anti-Semitism is also motivated by tribalism, by a need to belong to a tribe, and thus to define the other. So part of the way you define your tribe is by differentiating it from the other. And Jews are convenient other. And, so it all feeds together, right? So fear, absolutely, because fear is what drives you towards tribalism. And then envy is part of what gives you the target, which is the Jew, let's say. So it's a combination of things. But I think it's part of how tribes define themselves is by excluding. And it's particularly important to exclude the Jew today because the Jew looks like the white, let's say. So it's important to differentiate, to exclude him. That way you define who you are. But it's motivated, you're right, by fear, by envy, by ignorance. Fear is a huge factor in the culture in which we live today. Massive. How can you argue the leftist intellectual establishment is discredited while simultaneously arguing the leftist intellectual establishment is the reason we're not moving towards capitalism? because I don't think those are the true alternatives, right? So I think the leftist intellectual establishment is discredited. Particularly, I don't think it has cachet in the culture. But neither does capitalism. That is, the lessons that the intellectual leftist establishment has taught America, the West, for 100 years, they are being absorbed into the culture. So the right to health care, the right to a job, the right to a living wage, those have just absorbed. And then the intellectuals, by a large majority of the people in the country, are laughed at, ridiculed, but they have an influence. They have a massive influence, and they've had a massive influence. And the people who are ridiculing them, the people who are rejecting the leftist intellectual establishment, don't realize how much they've been influenced by the leftist intellectual establishment. So all the Trump voters who reject the elites are just acting out the elites' plan. I mean, my view is Donald Trump is a leftist when it comes to economics. And, you know, so they voted for another leftist. So it's not like everybody's inherently capitalist, and as soon as they abandon the intellectual influence of the left, they immediately become capitalist. It's not how it works. There are other influences, for example, nationalism, statism of other forms, racism, just nothingism, just a mishmash of all the stuff that has happened around them, which is usually just mixed economy type statism, mixed economy type stuff. So again, the intellectuals have had their influence. They've impacted the world. Now, they are for the most part discredited and laughed upon, and you see that they lose the elections, right? Or have at least. Now we'll see. We'll see where the Trans coalition will hold, but think about the UK, where the intellectuals all supported remain, all supported either the Liberals or the Labour, and got clobbered in this last election. No, very few intellectuals supported the Conservatives. And more intellectuals, I think, as a percentage of the population in the UK are conservative than are in the US. That's just a hypothesis. I'm not sure that's true. All right, seems like American politics is moving towards pure nationalism on right versus pure socialism on left. Which do you believe is the lesser of two evils? It doesn't matter. They're both the same. I don't think it matters. And again, as I've said in the past, and as Leonard Peikoff has said, and Ayn Rand actually said, I don't think the country will ever buy into socialism. Not qua-socialism. For example, think about how Americans treat Second Amendment rights. Well, now expand that to property. I mean, socialism is the nationalization of property. I just don't see that happening in America. I think fascism is much more likely. Now, it could be fascism of the left or fascism of the right. It could be from the Republican side or the Democratic side. I don't know. But socialism really is socialism. I don't think will ultimately be successful in America and will ultimately succeed. Now, maybe in the end, I don't know. But I think that it's much more likely that we become some kind of fascist, religious, nationalist combination of left or right. And I don't know the difference at that point between left and right, because at the end, they're all the same. So I don't know what's less of the two evils. And the question is, which one can be more successful in the long run? Let me also say this. I've been thinking about this recently. There is tons of content attacking the left. Good content attacking the left. I mean, Dave Rubin, most of his interviews today are attacking the left, and they're good. Some of them, anyway. Ben Shapiro is good at attacking the left. Jordan Peterson is good at attacking the left. But there's nobody good attacking the right. There's nobody good attacking nationalism. The left's attack on nationalism is pathetic, because they're nationalists in a different sense. And as I've always said, Bernie Sanders at the end is anti-immigration, is anti-globalization. I mean, there's no difference here. So there's nobody to attack the right. So I read all this alt-right stuff, and then I read the conservatives trying to attack the alt-right stuff, and they make me more scared. So I view my job primarily right now as responsible for attacking the right. I think other people are doing the left. I think there's plenty of people doing the left. And I think most of my audience knows the left sucks. Now, I do the left. I just did Kyle. So I'll do the left once in a while. But most of my emphasis is going to be on attacking the right because I don't think anybody else is out there doing it. I think it's where I bring a unique perspective. I think it's where objectivism has something to say that nobody else has to say. And I think that there isn't enough literature, enough content about attacking the danger of the right. And, and I do the left, but I probably do the right more than I do the left for those reasons. All right. Thanks, guys. It's been a long show. It's Christmas. It's a time to consider your values. If this is one of your values, then please show your support by making a contribution on yaronbrookshow.com/support or on subscribestar.com/yaronbrookshow. Value for value. I appreciate all of you who support the show. I appreciate all of you who use Super Chat to support the show. Thank you, and I will see you on Thursday, and I'll be here. Unless something happens, I will be here with Amy to take your questions and discuss. We usually discuss politics with Amy, so discuss some political stuff from the news. Talk to you soon, guys.